Hello from Desert Rats 2011. My name is Megan MacArthur. I'm a NASA astronaut, and here is one of my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Crystal, and I'm one of the geologists for the NASA 2011 Desert Rats crew.
We're real sorry we couldn't be in the classroom with you today to answer some of your questions, but our friend Heather here is going to read us some of your questions, and we'll give our best shot at answering them for you.
Okay, so the first question, what does the term G-force mean?
What does the term G-force mean? Well, we talk a lot about the force of gravity in our job, and whether or not it's the gravity that we feel here on Earth, or many times that force of gravity like you might feel on a roller coaster as you go around a turn. And then of course when we're in space we talk about microgravity, meaning that we're not feeling the force of gravity or maybe even partial gravity that you might feel on a different planet. So gravity is a variable when you're off Earth basically, and so we have to think about gravity or the lack of gravity when we plan out space missions.
And what is NASA?
What is NASA? NASA is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and NASA thinks about a lot of different kinds of science problems. NASA looks at how we travel and work in space, and it also looks at studying our own home planet from space.
So how do they drive something like a spaceship?
How do we drive a spaceship? Well, different kinds of spaceships need different kinds of propulsion based on how far away they're going to go. So the space shuttle needs to be able to get kind of not that far away from Earth. The space station is only 300 miles up above the surface of the Earth. So it needs a certain amount of fuel. It needs to get to a certain speed in order to orbit around the Earth. If it wanted to go much, much farther away, it would have to go a lot faster and carry a lot more fuel.
So how do you think it would feel to travel to space to the moon?
You want to try that one? How would it feel to travel to the moon?
You can go ahead with that since you've actually been in space.
Well, you know, no one has been to the moon for almost 40 years, since I was a little baby. I've been in space one time, and I flew aboard the space shuttle Atlantis, and we flew in orbit around the Earth, and we went and picked up the Hubble Space Telescope, which points out at the universe and takes pictures of the universe far, far away, but we were only 300 miles up above the surface of the Earth. Floating in space is really fun. It's fun all the time, but you're working really hard when you're in space. I was only there for about 2 weeks, and we pretty much were working all the time.
What does the surface of the moon look like? Is it flat or does it have mountains and craters?
So the moon has all sorts of different things on it, and that's one of the reasons why we're so excited to study it, particularly from a geology point of view. So if you go out at night and you look up at the moon, you can see it, you'll notice there are light patches and there are dark patches. And the light patches are actually mountains. There are high areas on the moon that have been crushed up and raised up, and the dark patches are what we call Maria, which I know there was another question about that are basically gigantic lava plains that cover the surface of the moon, and those are much smoother and separate the mountains from the other mountains that are on the moon.
So we had a lot of spacesuit questions.
Yeah.
Similar to, why are the spacesuits so big? What does it feel like to be in a spacesuit? Why is it white? So if you could answer those, that would be great.
Sure. Well, you can't see Heather because she's off screen, but she actually is a spacesuit expert. So if I say anything wrong, I'm sure she will jump in and help me out with the right answer. We actually have a couple of different kinds of spacesuits that we use, that we used to use in the space shuttle program. One of them was an orange suit, and we called it a pumpkin suit because it did make you look like a giant pumpkin. And we would wear that suit when we launch in the space shuttle and when we land in the space shuttle, and that suit would keep us safe if we had any kind of pressure leak in the space shuttle cabin. Once you're in space, if you want to go outside the space shuttle, you have to wear a special suit to keep you safe. And those suits are the white suits that you're talking about. You sometimes will see a red stripe on that suit. Sometimes it's a solid line, sometimes a dashed line, and that helps folks watching know who is doing what. The solid red stripe is the lead spacewalker, the #1 spacewalker, and the different suits have different stripes on them to help us identify folks.
So how far away is the moon? How long would it take us to get there?
So the moon sits at about 300,000 kilometers away from the Earth, and just to sort of put that into perspective, because I know that's a really big number and I even have issues thinking about that. If you think about the Earth, if you started where you're living and you ran all the way around the Earth and came all the way back around, you'd actually have to go around about 20 times just in order to get from the Earth to the moon.
That's a long ways.
It's a long ways.
I think it takes about 4 days to get there. When they used to go to the moon, it would take the Apollo astronauts 4 days to get there.
So approximately how many astronauts are there, and have there been any female astronauts?
Well, there's about 60 active astronauts in the NASA astronaut office at this point, and I think I was the 51st woman in space. So there's been about 55 women so far that have flown in space. So lots of opportunities for little girls out there to maybe come and be an astronaut.
Do you think that the Earth would seem small if you were on the moon?
I've seen pictures where the Earth really looks small from the moon. I think it would be an amazing sight to see, and I'd like to see it for myself.
Do you think that kids could ever go to the moon?
I think someday we might be able to send people kind of sightseeing maybe into space. There's a lot that we still have to learn about how to live on different planets, but I think that all of the signs point to someday we'll be able to move on to other planets and to live there long term. So I certainly would hope that we would bring kids with us.
And how about Robonaut 2? What do you guys know about Robonaut 2? We've got one in space.
You know lots about Robonaut.
I do, actually.
So if you could just tell us a little bit about Robonaut, that would be great.
So the idea behind Robonaut is to allow the astronauts and the geologists to be able to step back from not the more mundane tasks, but sort of the repetitive ones. And Robonaut itself has almost human-style dexterity in order to be able to do things. And as Heather mentioned, we do actually have a Robonaut in space. It was launched in early of 2011. It was turned on the ISS in the middle of the summer, and it's actually up there doing work right now.
And as far as astronauts and geologists working together, how's that going?
I think it's going really well. I'm learning a lot from the geologists that we have here. I don't know if they're learning anything from me at all, but I think it's a great pairing of folks that have some operational experience and some spaceflight experience to work with the geologists that have the specific knowledge we'll want to take with us on these planetary missions.
Yep. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies, and thanks to Exploration Place in Wichita, Kansas, for sending in these fantastic questions.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
See you
Bye.
guys.